Okay, next one is from Benelong, one of the moderators on the subreddit.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Benelong.
Okay, so Benelong's question is, the Central Coast has seen massive demographic shifts, with many people moving out of Sydney, which has subsequently driven up local housing costs and rent. What is the federal government doing to ensure that young locals and essential workers in Robertson aren't entirely priced out of their own community? I think this has changed over the last couple of days, hasn't it? Sydney housing prices and Melbourne housing prices are heading down.
Yeah, so I think like to address the demographic shift and then sort of the issue that we face and then sort of what's being done to address it, I think are the three things to answer Benelong's question. Sort of starting with that, I call it intra-regional migration, in that the Central Coast has seen a significant increase in its population base, particularly since COVID. The population was steadily increasing prior to COVID, but has taken off like a firecracker. People wanting sea changes, people moving out of city-based areas because of expense and price and cost of living. And that's seen significant movement into the Central Coast, particularly from what I call New South Wales, which is Newcastle, Sydney, Wollongong. So those people coming into our sort of area from those areas, particularly Sydney. Which is a good thing. I think people moving into the area is an important thing. I think it adds to our workforce base. It adds to the local economy. It contributes to the fabric of what our community is. And more often than not, the families I meet who have come here from Wollongong or Sydney or Newcastle, they get amongst it very quickly. Get involved in volunteer organisations. They want to be part of our Central Coast family. But you're right. I mean, when there's more demand for housing, demand goes up, right? And as a result, housing prices go up, and we've seen that in the southern end of the Central Coast, sort of in the peninsula sort of area, but also too that's tracking up through into the north. And that's sort of been an ongoing issue. Obviously, there's been historical issues when it comes to either taxation or when it comes to sort of that asset component, or land hoarding, whatever it might be. We've seen that constraining supply. We've seen the increase in demand from people moving into the area, increasing that as well. But also to the supply component, where not enough houses are being built across the country, contributing to both supply of housing, but also to the cost of housing as well. And as you rightly pointed out, we've seen some reduction in housing prices that have occurred across the country as a result of some recent changes that we have brought forward to the Parliament when it comes to changes in taxation, particularly around the negative gearing space. And you only have to see anecdotally with some of the stories that we're hearing where first home buyers, young families with children, are now able to get into the housing market and have their first home at a more reasonable price than what it was yesterday, because of some of these changes that we're putting forward. But I think that is also then coupled with other changes that have been made, because I think there's a couple of things, right? I think there's the first home buyer component, and there's the Metropolitan First Home Buyers Assistance Scheme, and the build to rent, those sort of schemes as well that are occurring. But also too, there's the social and affordable housing aspect, particularly that affordable component and keeping workers near where they work. I think that's really important. You don't want to be commuting on a train or in a car or whatever it might be for 3 hours a day just to get to your place of work, and doing that every day. That's tough on your family, tough on yourself. It's also a very expensive endeavour. And that's where the Housing Australia Future Fund and the Social Housing Accelerator Fund have come into effect, both of which have been used and accessed by both Tier 1 housing providers on the Central Coast. And I think that's been quite beneficial when it comes to that affordable housing, and also to securing social housing on the Central Coast, particularly in the Robertson electorate. And then to the other big sort of elephant in the room when it comes to development of new supply and property is working with the state and local government to, speed up the processing times of development applications so that houses can actually be built. And to council's credit, I know everyone likes to, give council a bit of an earful every now and then, and I do too. I'm not immune to that, but I think, that they've actually come down on those DA wait times quite substantially, to their credit. And as a result, we will see more housing supply and stock built on the Central Coast. So I think those different factors are contributing to supply, but also contributing to people's ability to afford and get into the housing market. But obviously there's increased pressures and demands still because people are moving from those metropolitan areas into our region.